The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to those expressing them and do not necessarily reflect the OSIP Foundation Incorporated or any other group or individual. This podcast may contain dialogue or subject material that could be considered for mature audiences only. All aspects of How You Play the Game and the OSIP Foundation Incorporated are protected by copyright and other state and federal intellectual property laws. Unauthorized use without the express written consent of the OSIP Foundation Incorporated is strictly prohibited. If you're interested in sponsoring How You Play the Game, please email us at podcast@osipfoundation.org. Your sponsorship may be tax deductible. Hey everybody, and welcome to a new edition of How You Play the Game, the official podcast of the OSIP Foundation Incorporated. Yours truly, Jack Furlong, talking with and to you about what's going on as far as the world of sportsmanship is concerned. This is the second episode of the month of January. The year is now 2026. Glad you can be with us as always. You can check us out online at osipfoundation.org. You can email the show using the address podcast@osipfoundation.org. On the socials at facebook.com/osipfoundation, X and Instagram at osipfoundation, hashtag How You Play the Game. Let's get right into it. A couple of things have crossed my desk that I'd like to point out, and unfortunately, they're not all that good. The one that stood out to me the most, because of what's going on in the world right now, is the sportsmanship of the politics that surround some of the stories coming out of Minnesota. There's the unfortunate situation with ICE and whatnot. And the reason I bring that up, and normally I try and stay away from politics and whatnot, the reason I bring it up is because as I was scrolling through Instagram the other day, there was a comedian who I follow, who, he does all these like funny cat videos and whatnot. And the subject, like when he does these videos, I think it's one of the most funny things ever. It's great. Love it. Anytime he's not being political, I feel like he has the power to be one of the funniest people around. Well, he put out a video with the cats that was basically destroying anybody who did not agree with him, which was to come out on the left side of the whole thing and denouncing ICE and whatnot. And regardless of what one's political view on the situation might be, I think what scared me about that is that it creates a divide that is much more harmful. It is very unsportsmanlike because it basically says, in this conflict, I don't want to have to hear what you have to say. I don't want, if you're not with me, you're against me. And to me, that creates more boundaries. It builds walls instead of knocking them down. And I ended up unfollowing him. I was just like, I'm sorry, it's more, it's not even so much about what my beliefs are compared to what your beliefs are. It's, you've essentially said, if you don't agree with me, and I quote this, like you are not welcome on this page. And if you are a loving, true, kind-hearted person and you are still here, then you can stay. Like, the creation of those boundaries is to say that anyone who disagrees with me must be a terrible person is the complete antithesis of good sportsmanship. And I'm not even invoking whether or not one side is better than the other. It's more along the lines of, if your reaction is this, like, I get it. If you feel very strongly about an issue, I understand. You are entitled to your reaction, your internal emotional reaction based on these issues. But to then come out and draw boundaries, the best thing I can say is just be prepared for the consequences. I'm not calling for your job or for you to be canceled or anything, but, in terms of capitalism, be prepared to lose followers, to lose customers, and let the free market decide it, unfortunately, and if you still continue to be successful, great, that's fine, but it's just a shame that we have created a situation where anytime there is an issue, anytime there is a conflict, instead of looking at it through the lens of good sportsmanship, instead of looking at it through the lens of maybe, just maybe, someone else has a different opinion, and I don't have to agree with that opinion, but they are allowed to potentially have it, as long as they're not infringing upon my rights or violating me in a way that's completely unnecessary and unethical, etc. Just maybe someone else could think something different, and to let it be right there. It boggles my mind, because the same thing happens in sports. You know, a parent sees something and disagrees with a decision made by a coach or a referee or something, and the parent automatically thinks, you're wrong. I'm right. I know what's best. The fan thinks I know what's best for my team. Think about what just goes on in sports in general. How passionate these fans are, as if to say, I know what my manager and general manager and head coach and what they should be doing. I know better than them, the people who are in the industry. I know better than the officials on the field. You're a fan. You're allowed to have an opinion. You're allowed to react. You're allowed to discuss. You're allowed to comment. But do so in a way that just, keeps it in perspective, that that other people might disagree with you, especially the people who are making the decisions. That's why they are there and you are here. It's sad to me. It's bogus to me that this is where we are. At the same time that this kind of stuff is happening, there are different things coming across my desk where I'm just like, it's a shock, and yet it's not a shock. Okay? A video surfaced from this past weekend when the San Francisco 49ers were in Philadelphia to play the Eagles in the wild card round. And Eagles fans were throwing things at Niners fans. Full beers being thrown at passing innocent fans who are minding their own business. I'm sure that alcohol was involved since beers were being thrown, so I'm sure that being intoxicated may have played a role in this. But we're really to a point where we're going to just throw full beers at kids because they happen to be rooting for the visiting team? Are we out of our mind? And it just so happens to be in Philadelphia, where we seem to always bring this up with Philadelphia fans. I'm not trying to cast the full brush here and say that anyone who roots for Philadelphia teams is this way. It's more along the lines of, why does a small group of people always get the spotlight in Philadelphia to make it seem like all people who root for these teams are this way? Why do we have to keep going over it? Why do we have to keep, just rehashing this? It's sad. And I'm sure that if there are Philadelphia fans who are listening to this, you're probably thinking, well, I'm not like that. Well, congratulations. I'm glad you're not like that. I'm sure that you're a fantastic fan. But then why is it that we continually have these discussions? And I'm sure that there are other fan bases that are not immune to this. It just so happens that it seems like, from where I am sitting right now, it's always about this one group. And I really wish that it wasn't. I wish no groups did this. I'm not trying to justify other fan bases as being better than the Philadelphia fan base. I just don't understand why these things keep happening. And I think what really irks me even more is that as these things happen, and this applies to the discussions on the political stuff that I mentioned earlier. When we formulate opinions, it's always like we're trying to formulate opinion to make sure that the other person loses. The other person must be put down so that I can be right. It doesn't matter what side you might be arguing in the political situation with ICE and whatnot. It's more like when something like this, when like the thing with the comedian happens, I'm sure that there are people who are, if you scroll through comments on Instagram or just talk to people, it's, well, he was right, so you're the problem. Well, no, I think you're wrong, so I think you're the problem. Why can't we just have the conversation of saying, maybe we shouldn't bring politics into this, and maybe we should have normal, civilized discussions between people? Why is that so difficult? Is it because we allow our emotions to just play things like that? Like I recognize that we want to allow our feelings to be our feelings. We don't want the pendulum to be swinging back the way it was during the middle part of the 20th century with toxic masculinity and feelings are bad and anger is the only thing. Like I get that. We're trying to get away from that. But swinging it all the way to the other side where there's lawlessness is not any better. Have your feelings, have your opinions, but express them in a proper way. If this comedian had come out and just said, this is what I'm feeling because of this. Great. Wonderful. Instead, he came out and said, if you don't agree with me, you're not welcome here. That's messed up. That's the same thing that happened in Philadelphia. It's if you don't agree that the Philadelphia Eagles are the team that should be supported here, we're going to throw beer at you. Think about that for a second. The same thing has occurred in the sports world and the political world. It's the same thing. If you don't agree with me, you are bad, and I must do something about it. That's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. And maybe it is just a subset of people, but it's the people who are screaming the loudest. It's the people who have the ability to use the technology to get that voice out. And man, it is a shame. I had actually a couple of other things on my desk that I wanted to discuss in this episode. I don't even think it's worth it. I don't even think it's worth it. I think that this diatribe is enough this way. It's a short, quick episode. And I just hope that the people who are hearing this take a moment to think, just maybe I can do something a little bit better with this. I'm allowed to have my thoughts and my feelings and my emotions and my opinions just as much as the other person is. And maybe I can express that to people in a way that will encourage others to express what they're feeling, and maybe we can find some common ground. Rather than setting boundaries that are on the offensive. If you're not with me, you're not welcome here. The only place where I feel like that is an appropriate thing to say, if you're not with me, as if to say, let's sit down and have a normal conversation, then the reason you're not welcome here is because we're going to be spinning our wheels. We're not going to get anywhere. Okay? I say that out of self-preservation. I say that as a way of saying, I'd like to extend the olive branch. But if you refuse to take it, that olive branch will not be out there much longer. Because it's going to just leave me open to being hurt. And then it becomes real self-preservation. Sit down at the table with me and have a normal conversation with me, even if you disagree. I welcome that. What I don't welcome are those who say, you have a different opinion, therefore you're the enemy, You're evil. I hate you. Get out of here. That's not good sportsmanship. And that points to why we have a systemic problem that goes beyond sports. And that's what's really sad. You wonder why we continue to have all these issues in society. That's why. That's why. It's because it's widespread that way. We got to do something about it. It starts with you, though. It starts with your change. Because remember, no conversation like this ever ends in somebody going, you know something, you're right, I'll change now. Instead, it's about the internal struggle of saying, how do I just do better? How do I empower my allies? Because that's what we at OSIP try and do. We're not out here to try and change the world because the people who need our message the most are the people who will not listen. It's more about giving the people who will listen, who agree with us, the message that we got you. We got you. And in turn, maybe that will turn a key somewhere in the brain to say, I can always do better. But we got you. I want to thank you for joining me today on this short, quick little episode. As always, you can check us out online at osipfoundation.org. Email is podcast@osipfoundation.org. Facebook.com/osipfoundation. X and Instagram @osipfoundation. # how you play the game. We'll talk to everybody in February, which is a difficult month to pronounce. And until then, treat each other with respect. How You Play the Game is a production of the OSIP Foundation, Incorporated. The producer-engineer of this episode is Sean Ryan. Music by Soundspring Studio. The executive producer of How You Play the Game is Jack Furlong. For more information, visit osipfoundation.org.